All right, everybody. So we're going to get into yearning for lightness real quick. Let me go ahead and get my screen up to get to the lecture notes. All right. So, okay. So first we're going to do a little bit of defining that the author says. They define colorism as the preference for and privileging of lighter skin and discrimination against those with darker skin. And it remains a persisting frontier of intergroup and intragroup reactions or relations. Sorry. And so what they're really talking about is this idea that within international spaces and within cultural settings, because of colonialism and because of the way in which British empires and European empires then went and colonized a lot of spaces in the world and mixed with and or created dominance of white bodies or dominance with white bodies, we have consistently created spaces where whiteness is at the forefront and whiteness is perceived as, and the more white you are, is perceived as the more benefits and privilege you have. And societally structured as having more benefits. And so this particular article really dives into how that impacts cosmetics and how cosmetics are, how media covers cosmetics and creates and helps embody this market for lightening products within different persons of colors or communities of color. And so capitalism plays a big part of this, and you'll, as sociology majors, hear about capitalism a lot. But capitalism is the economic structure in which we currently operate globally. And it's this idea that we work to create in it's a very rugged individualistic idea of we create more money by creating products that sell, and these things consistently then produce more economic input for us to create more things that sell, and this creates more and more and more wealth, and it concentrates more and more wealth in specific hands and specific things. We're going to talk about major cosmetic companies that perpetuate these ideas that these skin lightening products will give you an advantage or help you create or tap into advantages that already exist for people with lighter skin tones. And they're going to talk about it as fairness creams, and they're going to talk about it as really harmful ideas. And so this link to creating a product that both has a high level of toxicity in most of these products with the chemicals and things that they use, but also creates a societal toxin in the sense of making it seem like an individual is not worthy unless their skin is lighter. They're not going to have the same benefits. And so by creating this dynamic, cosmetic companies are playing into that capitalistic idea that we're going to make money no matter what the cost, right? And no matter how much harm we create in doing so. And in this particular circumstance, there's been a lot of harm created. And so I'm going to give you some examples of some of these ads that the media creates. And I'm also going to give you some of the examples surrounding the ways in which media plays a part in this by washing out or lightening the skin tones of persons of color when they do ads or when they take cover shots for magazines or when they edit movies or what have you. And they do this in ways that create thinness as well. And that is really defined well in one of the documentaries towards the end of the semester. But in this particular one, we're going to talk about that coloristic idea that light is better. And there's an increase, overarchingly, no matter what and where the ethnic or racial group that they talk about, and they talk about multiple different communities of color, there's an overarching increase in these products as we move into the 21st century. And this is a 2008 article. I would probably bet that if the same study or thing was doing that, we would still find a heavy influence of these products. And it's pervasive, depending, like, no matter what the community is. And I think that showing that is really, really important, is that it's touching so many of these different communities of color in so many different parts of the globe in very, very, very negative ways. And the access they have to the different products and the different products level of toxicity, depending on the desire for or need of, or feelings of need of these products in each of these communities, does vary. Um, you see a very heavy use of this in some of the more Asiatic cultures and groups, but you see a little bit less of this in some of the more Hispanic and Southern or in South America. Um, so there is a different level to the use of these, but also the products that are being used have very different levels of toxins depending on the groups and who distributes them and parts of which parts of the world more harm can be done to on a global front and within global communities and have more done. So that's, this article really examines all of this in a very, very, very good way. And the targeted advertising, I do have an example of the targeted advertising towards men too, because that does also happen, especially when you look at places like India or things like that, where there's the very, very notion of this patriarchal structure is incredibly apparent still. And yet their class ranking and their hierarchical structures based on religion too also is impacted by this coloristic view of lightness, and how and they tie it into this your lighter categories has something to do with your religious structuring, which has to do with rank. And so we do talk about that does target specific male populations within these communities as well, but not as much as it does women. So it's overarchingly women. And so it does talk about how, because of the opportunities that are given for lighter skinned individuals in these very colonialized places, especially places where British rule has at some point in history taken over, you definitely see this link to fairness, or this idea that if you give this, you'll be more likely to be marriage material, you'll be more likely to be thought of as part of this promotion, you'll be more likely to get the job, you'll be more likely to do all of these things that in society we should not be looking at how light their skin is to make this happen. But in reality, social sanctions do happen for individuals with darker skin tones, and opportunities are less for these individuals. And so we're going to get into real quick some of these more harmful images. I fair warning, some of these are just sad and disheartening. But here are some of the ideas of these lightening products for different various cultural groups. And you know, this one down in the bottom right hand corner, really talking about that ability to attract a partner. This one in the top right hand corner is just tragic in every way. And the company actually was sued for this ad, thankfully, and it ended up being taken down. But again, obviously not before a Google search can't pull it right back up. You know, again, talking about that in that top left-hand corner, really talking about this idea of fairness, and then talking about how people perceive you down in the bottom with the male one. And this in the middle, really talking about self-image and beauty. And so we really want to pay attention to some of the things you might see in the media. We're going to talk next really about how this, why. Okay, so when you see these drives of these women in particular being changed and being lightened in very popular magazines, it's showing this difference between why these individuals would not be valued for the beauty that they have naturally and not need to be edited in these dramatic ways. And they do this again on magazines with thinness too, and they do this with other aspects of beauty. But it's important to talk about how these this lightning impacts and perpetuates racism and these control measures within different racial categories. And so we need to make sure that, again, part of this is paying attention to how the world operates and how it impacts people in very discriminatory ways. All right, so I'm going to get to the next lecture and talking about the optional readings for this week, or for this module, and talk about the tasks we have at hand. So I hope you have a great week and are getting through the stuff without any problems. If you have any problems, of course, please feel free to contact me.